Hey there, safecrackers, get your combinations ready because it's time for the Comic Vault! A vault full of comics that now includes Deadpool #1! That's right, Deadpool #1 from Marvel Now! I decided to give this book a shot. And the big reason that I decided to give it a shot was, one, it's drawn by Tony Moore, which is very pretty. I like Tony Moore's art quite a lot. And also, it's written, or at least co-written, by Brian Posehn. And I thought I had to give it a shot. Reason being is that Brian Posehn, being a stand-up comedian, I enjoy stand-up comedy quite a lot, and I wanted to see a stand-up comedian's approach to Deadpool. And that's the thing, is that Brian Posehn is a big comic book fan. I think it was the Comedians of Comedy that he was in, where he goes to a comic book store with Patton Oswalt, and they look at the complete lack of bags and boards when they buy their issues and say, well, then what good is it? These things are worthless without bags and boards. So I think that's interesting that he's a big comic book fan and that he got a chance to at least co-write it, because it says here in the back, written by Jerry Dugan and Brian Posehn, or at least I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Jerry something. Anyway, D-U-G-G-A-N. So, moving on. I decided I needed to give it a shot because of Posehn. That was the big reason. But there are some really good ideas in here. The first issue is all about Deadpool fighting dead presidents. Essentially, the bottom line is that there is a necromancer running around bringing dead presidents, or bringing presidents who are dead, back to life. And the S.H.I.E.L.D. agency, or the S.H.I.E.L.D. hires Deadpool because it's bad press for major American icons like Captain America or someone to be seen killing presidents, regardless of whether or not they're undead. So Deadpool is hired by S.H.I.E.L.D. to go take care of these people. And it makes sense. He's a guy that, even if he gets a lot of press for killing these presidents, he's not necessarily going to be thought of as less of a person, because the public doesn't necessarily have a positive opinion of him anyway. He's an assassin. He's fairly underground. So, this fighting with dead presidents thing is a really interesting thing. Reason being is that how they come back to life is the man who's bringing them back to life, the necromancer, is bringing them back to life in the hopes that they will fix the country. I love that. I love that idea. And he has this starry-eyed idea, these rose-colored glasses that he's walking around with, thinking that if he brings these presidents back to life, they'll fix the country. But of course, the presidents are the undead, and thus have nefarious plans. They don't want to help people. They're the undead. Undead do bad things because they're undead, and generally speaking. So they're brought back to life with nefarious plans, and I think that's great that this guy's running around with these rose-colored glasses thinking that, well, not literally rose-colored glasses, but figuratively, he thinks that just because they're from the past, just because they did significant things, they will fix everything. Not necessarily. Just because we look back on a certain time period as a guy who was, or especially with respect for a certain historical figure, that just because we look back on it with respect, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything they did helped, and it doesn't necessarily mean that what they did was useful, but more that they were living in a time in which things came together that helped them out. Now, of course, some presidents were extremely effective, and that cannot be argued. But then again, some presidents are effective and are viewed as effective and can be argued. So I think that's really interesting that they have this this sort of theme running through this, at least the first issue, of the past not necessarily being what it's cracked up to be. Now, even if you disagree with that, you can still read this book as if the presidents are just undead and there is no message to it. There's just dead presidents running around. And what we really get from that is an opportunity to have historically based referential humor. Now, to my understanding, according to some of my discussions with Cap, because he's reviewed some of those Deadpool Classics trades, that some of that classic Deadpool is really about, or a lot of the humor is derived from pop culture, and a lot of the humor is derived from reference to pop culture. So in this, it's nice to have reference to history. Now, my favorite couple lines in this come rapid fire in this book, and I'm going to give a couple of them to you, so spoiler, but they have some FDR humor in the first issue that cracks me up. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he says after he gets revived, undeaded, whatever, resurrected. So after he's resurrected, he says, "There is nothing to fear but me." I love that. And then the next panel he says, "Here's a new deal, die." And I think that's great. I think it's really funny. The thing that I'm not really getting a big kick out of, I love the fact that there's this over-the-top world where ridiculous things are happening, and then we get this really in-your-face Deadpool. I don't necessarily want an in-your-face Deadpool. I want a Deadpool who fits into his universe. I feel like once you make Deadpool a cartoon in relation to his own universe, once you've established rules and then have him break them, then it's difficult for me to take Deadpool seriously within his own universe. Now, I think the universe that these two writers have really established is worth reading. I'm not sure that I care for the way Deadpool fits into it. And I really feel like Deadpool is successful when the world matches his personality. When one's cartoonier than the other, it seems strange. You don't want a Deadpool who's not cartoony enough. You don't want, well, let me rephrase that. You don't want a Deadpool who's extremely straight-laced and more Punisher-like. That'd be weird. You wouldn't want that. But when you have a world that rises to his level and then you have to jump him up there to be weirder than it, I think Deadpool ought to be the perfect character to deal with the weird situations. I feel like it ought to be mano a mano. Not Deadpool is weirder than everything going on, but rather Deadpool is the guy who you would go to handle the weird stuff. Like, for example, you know, you'd go to Captain America if there's a national threat. You go to the Punisher if there's a mob boss that's ruining things, you need him killed. And if there's a guy with, let's say, animal-themed powers running around, you go call Spider-Man. But in this case, something really bizarre is happening. A man is bringing presidents back to life. Well, a man is resurrecting zombie presidents. Who's going to kill him? Well, Deadpool. It makes sense. Why? Because it's a really weird thing. And I love what they're doing with it, but I'm not sure that I care for his characterization in this first issue. So, my recommendation, I think this book might be worth reading. Of course, I think we're about, I don't know how many issues in we're into it by now, but I think the humor is entirely worthwhile. I'm not sure that this characterization of the Deadpool is the Deadpool for me. So my recommendation, if you're a big Deadpool fan, check it out. If you are a big stand-up comedy fan, I think you owe it at least one issue. And if you're me, I'm not going to keep reading, but I wouldn't be opposed to reading it later. It's just a matter of priorities with my pull list. So, thanks for watching The Comic Vault. I'm Vince, this is Geekvolution, and the Comic Vault is vast and unknowable. Huge and ominous and ridiculously awesome, cool, huge, and more adjectives that make it big and mystical. So, if you would like to donate to the Comic Vault, you can go to Geekvolution, you can send stuff to Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Again, thanks for watching the Comic Vault, and we will catch you next time! I don't know what this means, but I did it anyway. Goodbye.